welcome back to Go Sleepy, where legends drift into dreams. Tonight, we step into the shadows of King's Landing, into the quiet footsteps of a man who knew every whisper, every secret, every hidden truth. Close your eyes, let the candlelight settle, and follow the soft rustle of robes moving through dark corridors as we unravel the entire story of Varys, the Spider, the master of whispers who shaped kings and saved realms in silence. Breathe deeply. The night is soft. The secrets are waiting. And sleep is near. Night settles differently over the free city of Lys. Other cities grow dim and tired as the light fades, but Lys glows. Soft lanterns over canals, floating candles drifting like lost memories, perfume in the air thick enough to lull even the most restless soul into dreams. Yet beneath that velvet beauty lies a darkness that moves quietly, unseen and listening. It is within this twilight world, where silks hide sins and shadows cradle secrets, that a child named Varys first opened his eyes. He was not a child born into warmth. No mother's lullaby wrapped around him. No father's steady hands to guide him. Instead, he was simply one more lost soul left to the mercy of the streets, where orphans scavenged for scraps and slept beside the canals, hoping the night winds would not steal what little life they had. But even then, before he had a name, before he had a place, there was something watchful in him, something quiet, something that listened. Varys learned early that the world belonged to those who understood silence. Other children cried when hungry. He did not. Others begged loudly in the markets. He did not. Instead, he sat, still as a shadow, observing every merchant's gesture, every whisper traded between noblewomen, every jealous glance between rivals. While the other children survived by luck or pity, Varys survived by knowing. But survival in Lys never comes without cruelty. When Varys was still young, too young to understand what fate had chosen for him, he was sold to a troupe of traveling performers. Bright wagons painted in jeweled colors, laughter that never reached the eyes, men and women who smiled for coin, but slept with knives under their pillows. They traveled from Lys to Myr to Pentos, dancing and jesting for nobles who cared only for distraction. And within this wandering band, Varys was taught how to endure. The master of the troupe, an old man with rings on every finger, discovered quickly that the soft-spoken orphan had a talent, not for tumbling, not for singing, not for the jests that delighted drunken patrons. No, Varys could listen. He had an ear as sharp as any blade, and a memory that swallowed every word whole. Nobles whispered to each other behind tapestries. Lovers traded secrets in moonlit corners. Merchants muttered about debts, betrayals, and hidden desires. And though Varys remained unseen, their words found him. He did not yet understand the power of what he gathered. To him, secrets were simply stories, strange, fascinating, sometimes frightening stories that adults spoke when they believed themselves alone. But the troupe's master understood, and as their wagons rolled from city to city, Varys became something more than a performer. He became an unseen collector, a silent gatherer of truths, a child whose presence slipped unnoticed into rooms heavy with tension and wine. Still, life on the road was harsh. Cold nights, thin blankets, food measured by the handful, and always the feeling that he was a possession, not a person. Then came the night that carved his fate into something unbreakable. They had stopped in Mir, a place where amber light dripped from tall windows and the scent of molten metal hung in the air. It was a city of craftsmen and alchemists, and one of those alchemists, a pale man with a voice like rusted steel, approached the troop. He wanted a boy, young, whole, untouched by disease. A boy he claimed he needed for a ritual or an experiment, though no one dared to ask why. And the master of the troop, greedy as ever, sold Varys without hesitation. The alchemist took him to a shadowed chamber beneath the city, a place lit by a single candle, a place that smelled of fear, blood, and old, forgotten magic. Varys was laid upon a stone table, trembling yet silent, as he had always been. The alchemist spoke words Varys did not know, carved symbols into the air, and offered the child a potion so bitter it felt like swallowing ice. Then, with ritualistic calm, he cut Varys. Not to kill him. No, to take something from him. It was in that moment, in the deepest pit of agony, that Varys learned what true silence meant. He did not scream. He did not beg. He did not curse the gods or fate or the man above him. Instead, he listened to the sound of his own life changing. The alchemist burned what he took from the boy in a brazier, muttering, "The flames will speak." But the flames spoke only to Varys, and what he heard was not a voice. It was a promise, soft, cold, and cruel. When the ritual ended, the alchemist cast him aside like refuse, leaving him to bleed out on the steps of Mir. Yet Varys did not die. He crawled, inch by inch, toward the alleyways where shadows gathered like old friends. And as he lay there beneath the moonlight, he understood something vital. The world does not protect the weak, so he would never be weak again. He sold his hair, his clothes, and even his tears for food or coin. He begged when he must, but mostly he watched, always watched. And when he was strong enough to stand, he found a purpose. He would use secrets, the very thing adults whispered believing no one listened, as his weapon. He would turn information into sustenance. He would become someone the world could never again cast aside. Varys became a thief, but not of gold or jewels. He stole words, intentions, betrayals, and confessions. Soon, whispers filled his pockets as easily as other men filled theirs with coin, and in the underbelly of Mir, among cutthroats and deserters, he found a companion, a boy named Illyrio, broad-shouldered and ambitious, who saw in Varys not a victim, but a partner. Together they built a business, one born in alleys, attics, and candlelit dens. The poor sold secrets for bread. The fearful traded whispers for protection. The rich paid dearly to learn what their rivals planned in the dark. And so, in the shadows where he had nearly died, Varys discovered his true power. Secrets were the purest form of currency. And he would become the richest man in shadows the world had ever known. In the forgotten corners of Mir, where the lamplight dissolved into fog and the air carried the scent of old secrets, two boys began weaving a future that would one day shake kings. One was Illyrio Mopatis, broad-shouldered even in youth, quick to laugh, quicker to bargain. The other was Varys, thin, quiet, pale as moonlit parchment, a boy whose eyes seemed to hold every whispered truth in the city. They met not as friends, but as survivors. Yet they recognized something rare in each other, ambition shaped by hunger, and hunger shaped by pain. Illyrio was a thief of objects, rings, purses, delicate trinkets, whatever glittered enough to be worth the risk. Varus was a thief of words, and in the labyrinth of Mir's alleys, objects lost could ruin a man for a day, but words lost could ruin him forever. At first, their partnership was small. Varus would listen, at tavern doorways, behind silk curtains, in the shadowed attics where nobles kept their forbidden pleasures. Then he would whisper what he heard to Illyrio, who would decide how best to make coin from the knowledge. They sold secrets to rival merchants, to jealous spouses, to ambitious apprentices hungry for advancement. The two boys became like smoke, everywhere and nowhere, drifting through the city's hidden spaces, leaving behind quiet devastation for those foolish enough to speak too freely. But soon, Varus discovered a truth that would shape his destiny. People will pay more to hide a secret than they ever will to learn one. It began with a jeweler, gray-bearded and trembling, who had stolen a small ruby from a noblewoman's necklace. Varus overheard the confession, faint, panicked words spoken to a friend after too much wine. Illyrio smiled when Varus reported it. "We don't tell the noblewoman," he said. "We tell the jeweler we might tell her." And just like that, silver clinked into their hands, enough silver to feed them for a week. The jeweler begged them to keep silent, promised more each month, promised whatever they asked. Secrets, Varus learned, were not merely information, they were shackles, and he became a master at forging them. Their reputation grew quietly, not publicly, for that would have been dangerous, but in whispers, those same whispers Varus had once fed upon. Criminals spoke of a pale boy who knew every hidden sin. Merchants spoke of a young man who could make a rival disappear, not by blade, but by rumor. Even the city guards stepped carefully around them, for no one wanted the spider's eyes on their private dealings. Yet Varus was not content with just Mir. His early suffering had carved into him a hunger, not for riches alone, but for control. He had learned what it meant to be helpless, discarded, treated as less than human. And so he vowed silently as he moved through the city's underbelly. Never again would he live at the mercy of another. Never again would he be powerless. Illyrio, ever practical, understood. "If we bind a man with a secret," he said one night, as they sat atop a rooftop overlooking Mir's glowing canals, "we hold him. But if we bind a whole city, we rule it." Varus's lips curved into the faintest whisper of a smile. They expanded, slowly at first, then swiftly. Varus created little birds, though the name would come much later, street children like he had once been, forgotten by the noble born and ignored by scholars. He paid them with food, safety, and gentle words. He taught them how to walk unseen, how to hear what was not meant for their ears, how to slip in and out of doorways without stirring the air. These children adored him, for he never struck them, never mocked them, never treated them as less. In them, he saw fragments of the boy he once was, lonely, hungry, invisible. And so his network grew, tiny, soft-footed watchers scurrying through the city, gathering whispers like autumn leaves. Every secret they found flowed through Varus, and every coin earned flowed through Illyrio's eager hands. In time, they became kings in the shadows. Not crowned kings, not royal kings, but something more subtle, more enduring. After all, kings die. Secrets do not. But power attracts danger, like moths to flame. Enemies began to take notice. Guilds resented their influence. Wealthy patrons they blackmailed plotted revenge. Even magisters whispered of eliminating the two upstarts before their influence spread too far. Varys and Illyrio adapted. They played rivals against one another, revealing just enough truth to spark chaos while keeping themselves untouched. They made enemies fight enemies, and through the smoke of conflict, they remained quiet, unseen, indispensable. When a wealthy cloth merchant threatened to expose their work, Illyrio arranged for him to be caught in his own scandal. Information provided by Varys, delivered gently and devastatingly. When a group of thieves accused Illyrio of encroaching on their territory, Varys overheard a rumor that one of their leaders had betrayed the rest. Distrust fractured them long before a blade needed to be drawn. Through all of this, Varys watched humanity with cold curiosity. People lied, people betrayed, people confessed their darkest sins to lovers, to priests, to the night itself. And every sin, every whisper, every fragile truth belonged to him. Still, something stirred within Varys that Illyrio never fully understood. A subtle sense of purpose that reached beyond coin, beyond survival, beyond mere. Varys had seen the darkest depths of human cruelty, felt it carved into his very flesh by a red-robed sorcerer, and deep within the boy who had once bled alone on stone stairs, a quiet belief began to grow. No one should suffer as he had, not by chance, not by fate, not by the whims of the powerful. Someday, he whispered once when Illyrio asked why he cared so much for the children in their employ, "We will work for more than gold." Illyrio laughed, but Varys did not, because in Varys's heart lay a secret dream, one he never spoke aloud. A realm where kings ruled wisely, or not at all. A realm shaped by order, intelligence, and stability, not cruelty or magic or chance. But that dream was for later. For now, the web continued to grow. Eventually, their influence stretched so widely that even magisters began using them, quietly, fearfully. They hired the young Shadow Lords to uncover plots, expose rivals, track missing treasures, seduce information from enemies abroad. Varys became known not merely as a listener, but as a whisper broker, one who charged not for what he told people, but for what he agreed not to tell. There came a night when Illyrio sat counting piles of silver, while Varys stared at the flickering lamp flame, lost in thought. "We're gods of the alleys," Illyrio said proudly. "We're spiders at a web," Varys corrected softly. And the web was only beginning. For soon, Varys's reputation would cross the narrow sea, drifting like cold mist toward a city where kings fell, queens schemed, and lords whispered in dark corridors. King's Landing, the capital of 7 kingdoms built on 7,000 lies, a place where a spider would thrive, and a place where Varys' true destiny waited. Whispers travel farther than ships. They drift across oceans with the ease of wind crossing a graveyard, slipping between waves unseen. And so, long before Varys ever set foot upon Westerosi shores, his name had already crossed the narrow sea, softly, uncertainly, like a rumor one repeats without knowing why. In King's Landing, that name found hungry ears, for at that time, the 7 kingdoms were not united in strength, but in fear. The Mad King, Aerys II Targaryen, ruled from a throne sharper than his reason. His paranoia deepened with every passing season, his distrust spreading like wildfire across the realm. He saw traitors in every corner, plots in every smile. The court trembled beneath him, uncertain which lord or knight or innocent servant would trigger his rage next. Eris's advisors tried to calm him, to guide him, to keep him anchored to something resembling sanity. But fear is a wildfire too, and once it burns, it rarely stops. So when whispers reached the Red Keep about a man, no, a shadow, in the free cities who could unearth any secret, expose any plot, hear any whisper spoken in the dark, Eris became obsessed. A man who could know the hidden minds of his enemies. A man who could tell truth from treachery. A man who could keep the king safe from invisible blades. Eris demanded that this spider be brought to him. And so Varys, quiet master of shadows, was summoned. Illyrio, ever pragmatic, saw opportunity. Westeros will pay more for whispers than Myr ever could, he said, clapping Varys on the shoulder. A mad king's court is a perfect place for a spider to spin its web. But Varys hesitated. He had thrived in shadows, yes, but shadows in the free cities were simple. Kings, however, even unstable ones, cast shadows far larger and far more dangerous. Still, he felt the pull of something inevitable, a whisper in the dark reminding him of the vow he made as a child, left bleeding on cold stone. Never again powerless, never again helpless. Knowledge would be his armor. Secrets would be his sword. So he boarded the ship. The crossing was long, the sea winds cold. Varys watched the waves break beneath the bow, each one whispering like a memory. The troop that abandoned him, the alchemist's cruel ritual, the children he protected, the empire of secrets he carved from nothing. He had risen from castaway to counselor-to-be, yet he felt no pride, only purpose. When King's Landing came into view, it looked nothing like Lys or Myr. No floating lanterns, no jeweled canals, no perfumed night air. Instead, the city sprawled like a beast of stone and timber, smoke rising from chimneys like sighs from its weary population. The Red Keep loomed atop Aegon's Hill, crimson walls glowing darkly against the setting sun. It was a fortress built for dragons, not men. But Varys knew, fortresses hide more secrets than they keep. He was escorted through the city by gold cloaks, who stared at him with thinly veiled suspicion. They did not understand how a soft-spoken man with perfume-scented robes and careful steps could protect a king. But Varys did not need their approval. All he needed was access. Inside the Red Keep, the air felt different, thick, watchful, tense like a room full of people holding their breath. The courtiers he passed whispered behind gloved hands, glancing at him as though he were a ghost. Rumors had already grown wild. The spider drinks dreams from sleeping men. The spider can hear words spoken miles away. The spider is a sorcerer himself. Varys let the rumors grow. Fear, after all, is an excellent disguise. When he was brought before King Aerys, he bowed deeply. The Mad King stared at him through unblinking eyes, silver hair tangled, fingers twitching like claws. Firelight flickered behind the monarch, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. "So," Aerys murmured, "you are the one who hears what others do not." Varys lifted his gaze only slightly. "Your Grace," he whispered, voice calm as still water, "I hear what people wish to hide." Aerys leaned forward, enthralled. "And you will hear for me." And just like that, Varys was given a place in the king's court. He moved through the Red Keep as silently as clouds drifting across the moon. Servants ignored him. After all, he seemed harmless. Nobles underestimated him. Too soft, too strange, too foreign to matter. Guards dismissed him, too quiet to be dangerous. And so, unnoticed, Varys listened. He discovered immediately that King's Landing was drowning in secrets. Every corridor whispered. Every chamber held betrayal. Every noble dreamed of gaining power through marriage, coin, or treachery. The small folk whispered of corrupt officials. The lords whispered of rebellion. The maesters whispered of prophecies no king wanted to hear. And all of it came to Varys. He expanded his network with the same precision he once used in the free cities. Street children became his eyes. Forgotten servants became his ears. Even drunk soldiers, for the price of cheap ale, revealed truths they should have buried. Varys learned who planned to betray the crown, who had already done so, and who feared the king more than they feared death. And as he fed Aerys carefully selected truths, the king's paranoia deepened. He trusted Varys more than his own son, more than his own hand, more than sanity itself. Yet Varys gave him only what served the greater purpose, a purpose no one yet understood. It was in King's Landing that Varys's dream began to sharpen. The 7 kingdoms were fragile, held together by fear, pride, and ancient names. Varys saw the suffering in the streets, the cruelty of nobility, the carelessness of rulers who treated human lives like pieces on a Sivas board. He saw how Aerys's madness threatened to burn the realm to ash. And so he chose a path that few could comprehend. He would serve the realm, not the king. A dangerous decision. A lonely one. A decision that would shape every whisper he carried thereafter. As Varys walked the torchlit corridors each night, his robes brushing softly against stone, he listened not only for secrets, but for possibility. Possibility of change. Possibility of a better ruler. Possibility of a peaceful realm where children would never bleed on cold steps as he once had. The spider had found a kingdom, and the kingdom, without knowing it, had already become his web. There is a certain stillness before a realm tears itself apart. The air grows heavy. The corridors grow quiet. Smiles become brittle. And behind every closed door, someone whispers of a future they cannot yet name, but already feel trembling beneath their feet. Varys walked through this stillness daily, moving like a shadow down the torchlit hallways of the Red Keep, listening as the kingdom drifted toward ruin. King Aerys II had sunk deeper into madness. His silver hair hung in tangled strands, his fingernails grown long and claw-like. He no longer trusted the hands of even his most loyal servants. He barely trusted the air he breathed. Varys saw it all, the way the king's eyes twitched toward shadows, how he recoiled from imagined threats, how he murmured about fire and betrayal as though the realm itself plotted against him. What Aerys did not realize was simple. The realm truly was plotting, and Varys heard every whisper. In the great halls, lords exchanged tense glances as they reported to their unstable king. In the gardens, ladies whispered rumors behind feathered fans. In the streets below, the small folk spoke openly of starvation, corruption, fear. All the while, unrest sparked quietly across Westeros, small fires in the dark, waiting for a single gust of wind to join them. That wind came in the shape of a prince, Rhaegar Targaryen, the crown prince, beloved by the people, noble, intelligent, a musician who preferred harps to swords, yet a warrior when he needed to be. And though he respected his father, Rhaegar saw the kingdom's decay and knew something had to change. Rumors reached Varys that Rhaegar met secretly with lords he trusted, Arthur Dayne, Jon Connington, even the loyal Lewin Martell. They spoke of succession, responsibility, ways to save the realm from Aerys's flame-soaked paranoia. But Aerys feared only one thing more than betrayal: his own son. Varys listened to the tension between them, each whisper sharp as a drawn blade. The king believed Rhaegar sought to usurp him. Rhaegar believed the king might plunge Westeros into fire and madness if left unchecked. And in this uneasy silence, a single spark fell. When Rhaegar attended the tournament at Harrenhal, everything changed. Whispers drifted back to the Red Keep like drifting smoke. The prince crowned Lyanna Stark as the Queen of Love and Beauty. Not his wife, Elia Martell. Not any lady of the court, but a northern girl with wild courage and a wolf's eyes. To many, it was a romantic oddity. To others, a political warning. To Aerys, it was treason. Varys sat quietly in his chambers as reports flooded in from his little birds. Every rumor, every gasp, every jealous whisper from Harrenhal. The Mad King's rage grew with each retelling. He feared Rhaegar was gathering allies around him. That the Starks, Tullys, Aarons, Danes, and others plotted in the shadows. What Aerys did not know was that the true danger had not yet come. When Lyanna Stark disappeared soon after, carried away under mysterious circumstances, her brother Brandon rode to King's Landing in fury, demanding answers. Aerys answered with fire and death. Brandon Stark was captured. His father, Lord Rickard Stark, was burned alive. Brandon was strangled before his eyes. Varys watched the executions from the shadows of the throne room, the smell of fire curling into the air, the agonizing screams echoing off stone. He saw the court tremble. He saw hatred ignite in the hearts of men who had once sworn fealty. And he understood. A rebellion had already begun, even if no swords had yet been drawn. Word reached Winterfell, reached the Vale, reached the Stormlands, reached the Riverlands. Angry fathers, grieving brothers, outraged lords, all united now by blood spilled unjustly. Robert Baratheon, Eddard Stark, Jon Arryn, their names became sparks, their oaths became flame, and fire began its march across Westeros. Aerys demanded loyalty from every house, loyalty born of fear, not respect. He ordered lords to send their heirs to King's Landing as hostages. He commanded more burnings, more arrests, more distrust. But no amount of fire could stop rebellion. Through it all, Varys remained silent, unseen, drifting through the chaos like a soft breeze that carried whispers instead of ash. He sent information carefully, never enough to betray himself, but enough to understand every side. He observed Robert's victories in the Riverlands, the loyalty of the North, the cunning of Jon Arryn, and the brutal determination of the Targaryen loyalists who fought to preserve their dying dynasty. He watched alliances bloom and crumble, watched hope and hatred swirl like storms above a kingdom tearing itself apart. Aerys demanded reports daily, and Varys delivered them with caution. He revealed truths that kept the king alert, but hid truths that would plunge the realm into even greater ruin. He played a dangerous game of balance, knowing that too much honesty would make him a target, and too much deceit would doom the kingdom he hoped someday to protect. through it all, one question echoed in his mind. Who deserves the throne? And who deserves the realm? The Targaryens were losing their grip. Robert was winning battles but carried his own flaws. Ned Stark fought honorably but had no desire for a crown. The Lord sought survival, not justice. The small folk suffered no matter who held the power. Varys stood in the center of it all, a single silent figure in the great storm, listening as each whispered secret braided itself into the web he controlled. And as the rebellion raged, he began to shape a purpose beyond kings and battles. He would survive every regime. He would know every truth. He would guide the realm quietly, invisibly, like a shadow behind every throne. But rebellions do not end quietly. They end in fire and steel. And soon, the fire that Aerys so dearly loved would consume his house. Varys saw the end coming long before others did. He knew the Mad King would fall. He knew Robert would win. He knew the realm would demand a new order. He only needed to decide where the spider belonged when the war was done. War spreads like a sickness. Once it begins, it touches every corner of a realm, seeping into the soil, the rivers, the very breath people inhale. And as Robert's rebellion raged across the Seven Kingdoms, Varys watched from the dim corridors of the Red Keep, his eyes tracing every tremor of the crumbling Targaryen dynasty. He saw the shifting moods of King Aerys, who grew thinner and wilder with each passing moon. The king muttered constantly of treasonous lords, of fire that would cleanse the realm, of voices only he could hear whispering from ash. Sometimes Varys wondered whether the king sensed the truth that loomed before him, whether he felt death stalking him as quietly as a shadow. The spider kept his distance, drifting through the keep like a pale ghost. His role was dangerous now. Aerys leaned on him too heavily, demanded too much, trusted him more than any sane man ever should. The king asked Varys to sniff out betrayal everywhere, even among loyalists. Yet Varys spoke carefully, revealing just enough danger to maintain the king's trust, but never enough to provoke Aerys into burning the kingdom alive. Still, the king's madness deepened. He ordered wildfire stockpiled. He commanded the alchemists to fill vault after vault with jars of emerald flame. He dreamed aloud of turning King's Landing into a funeral pyre. Varys listened and felt cold settle in his bones. Not fear for himself, for he had long since accepted risk as part of his existence, but fear for the realm, for the people he had vowed quietly in the darkness to protect. One night, Aerys summoned him to the throne room. The torches crackled violently, their glow dancing across the iron blades of the throne. Aerys leaned forward, thin fingers clutching the armrest like talons. "I must know," he whispered. "Who conspires to end me? Tell me, Spider. Tell me who they are." Varys bowed his head, speaking softly. "Your Grace, all the realm aligns against you. But if you strike blindly, you will only hasten their efforts." Aerys hissed, trembling with paranoia. "Burn them," he whispered. "Burn them all." Varys's heart tightened. He could not let the king ignite the city. He could not let a madman cleanse an entire kingdom in green hellfire. So he acted, quietly, subtly, carefully. He sent messages through the web of children and servants he trusted most. Messages that would later find their way into the hands of men who still held honor in their hearts. Messages meant to delay Aerys's plans, to frustrate the pyromancers, to stall the wildfire vaults from being sealed. He did not betray the king directly. No, that would have doomed him instantly. Instead, he nudged events just enough to buy time. But time, like secrets, runs out eventually. Word came from Dragonstone. Rhaegar had fallen at the Trident. The Silver Prince, the realm's last fragile hope for Targaryen sanity, lay dead in the river waters, struck down by Robert Baratheon. When Aerys heard the news, he did not weep for his son. He did not mourn. He did not even pause. Instead, he gave the order Varys had feared for moons. Burn them all. The alchemists prepared to ignite the city. The wildfire caches lay beneath the streets, ready to erupt at a single command. The king intended to die in flame and take 500,000 innocent lives with him. But fate had already moved another player onto the board. Jaime Lannister, the young Kingsguard knight, golden and bright as a storybook hero, entered the throne room with exhaustion in his eyes and rebellion in his blood. He had heard the orders. He had seen madness swallow the king he swore to protect. Varys watched from the shadows as the moment unfolded. The quiet, terrible moment when choice outweighed oath. Jaime drew his sword, and the Mad King died. The echo of steel meeting flesh filled the hall like a whispered prophecy fulfilled. Aerys' blood stained the stones beneath the Iron Throne, and for the first time in a long time, silence fell upon the Red Keep. A silence thick with shock, fear, and the lingering heat of wildfire that had almost devoured the city. Varys remained hidden as the last breath left Aerys' body, not out of cowardice, but out of necessity. He knew Jaime's act was noble in intent, but the realm would twist it, reshape it, disguise it. That was the nature of kingdoms. Deeds mattered less than the stories told about them, and Varys understood stories better than anyone. When Robert Baratheon's forces entered the city, the Red Keep trembled under the weight of new boots, new banners, new ambitions. Servants scrambled, nobles made excuses, and every man who had once knelt before Aerys now rehearsed the words they would offer their new king. Varys did not scramble. He did not rush. He did not hide. Instead, he simply waited, knowing exactly what would happen. For Robert Baratheon was a warrior, not a ruler. And warriors, Varys knew, always needed someone who could tell them what the realm whispered when no one else dared to speak. It was Jon Arryn and Stannis Baratheon who first insisted Varys remain in court. They understood the value of knowledge. They understood that even a man who had served a mad king could still serve a new one, especially if his loyalties lay not with rulers, but with the realm. Robert, exhausted from war and grief, agreed to keep the spider. He did not trust Varys, few ever did, but he saw the usefulness in him, and so the web remained intact, stronger than ever, now stretching across 2 reigns, 2 eras, 2 visions of rule. Varys adjusted quickly to the new king. He learned Robert's temper, his loves, his blind spots, his advisors. He listened to the court whisper about the Baratheon-Lannister marriage, about Cersei's ambitions, about the political fractures that had already begun forming beneath the surface. The war had ended, but peace is only another kind of battlefield. One night, as Varys stood alone in his chambers overlooking Blackwater Bay, he let the cool wind brush against his face. Ships rocked in the distance. Torches flickered on the docks like scattered stars. The Targaryens were gone. Robert sat upon the throne. The realm rested, but only lightly, and Varys whispered into the quiet, "Another king, another beginning, another chance to save the realm from itself." The spider had survived the fire, and now, in the growing moonlit calm, he prepared for the next chapter of his life, one woven from lies, loyalties, and a dream no king would ever understand. When Robert Baratheon took the Iron Throne, the Red Keep did not suddenly become a place of light. Power rarely changes its nature simply because it changes hands. The corridors remained shadowed, the walls continued listening, and secrets pooled in the cracks like rainwater after a storm. War had ended, but the kingdom was far from peaceful, and Varys, the spider, slipped gracefully into this new era as though he had always belonged there. He observed the new king with quiet fascination. Robert was unlike Aerys in every conceivable way. Loud instead of whispering, warm instead of cold, impulsive instead of calculating. But beneath the boisterous laughter and heroic tales lay a man who did not understand the weight of the crown that now rested upon him. Robert was a warrior forced into the role of a ruler, and Varys could see the truth that even the hand, Jon Arryn, feared to speak. The Seven Kingdoms did not need a warrior. They needed stability, and stability required someone who understood shadows. So Varys continued his work, quietly, invisibly, rebuilding his network of little birds. The war had scattered children, orphaned thousands, and filled the city with desperate souls. Varys knew their value. He found them hiding in alleys, sleeping beneath broken carts, begging near the gates. He offered them food, safety, soft beds, and protection from the cruelty that had once shaped him. In return, they brought him whispers of lords scheming for influence, whispers of ships arriving at Dragonstone, whispers of Cersei Lannister's cold ambition, whispers of Jon Arryn's gentle, hidden fears. King's Landing thrummed with secrets, a city that spoke in murmurs, even during the brightest day. Varys glided through it all, learning its language, hearing its pulse. He understood that power remained fragile, held not by swords or armor, but by the delicate balance of truth and deception. Robert brought peace. Yes, but peace built on wine, hunts, and nostalgia could not last forever. It was Jon Arryn who noticed the cracks first. The aging hand saw things the king refused to see: growing debts, corruption festering in court, tensions rising between the Baratheons and Lannisters. Jon Arryn sought answers. He spoke to maids, bakers, armorsmiths, stable boys. His curiosity stirred dust in forgotten corners. Varys watched with careful concern. Jon was a good man. Good men often discovered truths that could destroy them. When Jon Arryn suddenly fell ill and died, Varys felt the shift in the air immediately. It was as though the Red Keep inhaled sharply, then held its breath. The court buzzed with speculation. Poison? Plot? Accident? Varys sifted through the whispers until one rose above the rest. The seed is strong. A phrase Jon Arryn had uttered shortly before his death. A phrase that echoed with danger. Varys knew what it meant, knew where it pointed, knew what truth it carried. A truth sharp enough to fracture the realm. He told no one. Not yet. His dreams for the realm depended on timing, on understanding, on patience. The wrong truth revealed too early could plunge Westeros into another blood-soaked war. and Varys had no intention of letting the kingdom burn again. As tensions rose between the crown and the Lannisters, Varys began to cultivate a secret plan, one he had been shaping since crossing the Narrow Sea, one that reached back to the last breaths of the Targaryen dynasty. For Varys did not merely survive the fall of House Targaryen, he preserved something of it. Across the sea in the free cities, 2 children still lived, heirs to a destroyed home, the last embers of a family that had once ruled for nearly 300 years. Viserys, and the newborn girl who survived because she was spirited away during the chaos. Daenerys. Varys learned of their survival quickly. He fed Illyrio information, gold, and silence. Together they watched over the exiled children as they grew in obscurity. The spider cared nothing for bloodlines or names, but he cared deeply for the realm's future. He believed, quietly but fiercely, that Westeros needed a ruler who could mend what had been broken, heal what had been wounded, and unite a kingdom frayed by rebellion, pride, and fear. Robert Baratheon was not that ruler, nor were the Lannisters, nor were any of the ambitious lords who whispered in dark corners. Varys had no illusions. Kings were fallible, nobles corrupted easily, but perhaps, just perhaps, someone raised outside the poisonous halls of power could become something different, someone like Daenerys Targaryen. So he wove his webs carefully, ensuring King Robert remained unaware of the growing strength of the Targaryen children. He mollified Robert's anger when rumors surfaced. He hid ships. He arranged coin to flow quietly across the sea, always in the dark, always out of sight, always waiting for the right moment. Yet even as he planned for a distant future, he tended the present with equal care. Robert's reign tottered on a foundation of unspoken truths, and Varys watched every tremor. He saw Cersei's growing hatred. He saw Joffrey's cruelty. He saw the Lannisters tightening their grip on the king's purse strings. He watched Ned Stark approach King's Landing with honor sharp as a blade, an honor that would soon cut him deeply. The spider watched them all, studied them, calculated them. He served the realm, not its rulers. He protected peace, not crowns. He believed in a future better than the present, one shaped by wisdom rather than whims. And so Varys's double life deepened, a loyal servant to King Robert by day, a quiet architect of Westeros' future by night. But he knew something else as well, something most men in the Red Keep never realized. Peace never lasts, not in a kingdom built on lies, not in a court where ambition grows wild and tangled, not when the truth of the royal bloodline lay hidden like wildfire beneath the city. One day, Robert Baratheon would fall. One day, the Lannisters would overreach. One day, the realm would shatter again. And when that day came, Varys planned to ensure that the pieces fell exactly where they needed to. For the spider did not simply observe history, he shaped it. Storms often begin with silence, a pause in the wind, a shift in the light, a breath held by the world before thunder finally rolls. In King's Landing, that silence arrived the day Eddard Stark descended the steps of the Red Keep for the first time, as Robert Baratheon's new Hand of the King. Varys watched him with quiet intrigue. Ned Stark carried winter in his eyes, honor rigid as frozen steel, truth bound tightly around his heart. He walked through the capital like a man who did not want to belong there, a wolf trapped in a den of serpents. And that, Varys knew, made him vulnerable. Too vulnerable for a city whose foundations were lies, secrets, bargains, and whispered threats. As Ned took his place beside the king, Varys felt the realm shift ever so slightly. The pieces on the board had begun to rearrange themselves. Robert Baratheon's reign was dying long before the boar's tusks pierced his flesh. The laughter grew hollow, the hunts grew longer, the drinking grew heavier. Varys saw the truth no one dared voice. The king marched toward his own end, blind to the cliff before him. And the Lannisters, they waited, patient, poised, calculating. Cersei Lannister's eyes glinted like polished gold whenever Robert stumbled or spoke foolishly before court. She was a queen trapped in a loveless marriage, sharpening her hatred year after year until it gleamed like a blade. Varys observed her quietly, never underestimating her. Behind her beauty lay ambition, and behind her ambition lay danger. Danger that now circled Ned Stark. He was too honest to survive here, too direct, too slow to understand that truth in King's Landing was not a weapon, it was a liability. Still, Varys felt a strange respect for the Northern Lord. Ned wanted justice. Ned wanted clarity in a world built on shadows. And perhaps more dangerously, Ned wanted to protect the children, Robert's children, though he did not yet realize they were not the king's at all. Varys knew. He had known for years, and he knew what the truth would cost. One evening, Varys found himself alone in the chamber of the small council. As the candles flickered low, he traced a finger along the cold stone table. A faint breeze wandered through the room, carrying the distant scent of the city's thousands, bakers, smiths, children, sailors, beggars, breathing as one great organism. This, he thought, was the realm, not the lords who bickered, not the kings who ruled briefly before falling. The people were the realm, and the realm was what he served. Footsteps approached from the hallway. Littlefinger entered with a sly smile, his cloak trailing behind him like a serpent's tail. "You keep too much to yourself, Lord Varys," he said casually. "And you," Varys replied, "share far too much." Littlefinger smirked. Secrets lose their value if no one pays for them. But they become deadly when shared unwisely. Their rivalry was an unspoken storm within the court. Two men of shadows, two spy masters with opposite philosophies. Littlefinger sowed chaos deliberately, believing that a broken realm offered him opportunity. Varys, however, nurtured stability, believing that only a strong realm could protect the helpless. They danced around each other, each step measured, each smile concealing daggers. And in the center of their dance stood Ned Stark, unguarded, exposed, unaware. When Ned discovered Jon Arryn's book on lineage, when he began comparing the Baratheon features inherited by every true-born child except Joffrey, Varys knew the moment of reckoning had arrived. The truth stood before Ned Stark as clearly as dawn breaking over Winterfell. Joffrey was no Baratheon. And the Iron Throne rested on a lie. Varys did not rejoice at Ned's discovery. He feared it. For truth, once uncovered, cannot be hidden again. Not by whispers, not by webs, not by pleas for caution. Still, he approached Ned with gentle warning. In the Red Keep's darkened hall, Varys' voice floated like a soft wind. "Lord Stark, the truth is rarely a friend in this city." Ned's reply was simple, unyielding. "He deserves to know." Varys sighed inwardly. The king was dying. The realm trembled on a knife's edge. The Lannisters sharpened their claws, and Ned Stark, honorable and doomed, insisted on forcing the truth into the open. "Then I hope," Varys whispered, "you have made peace with what such truth will cost." And still, Ned would not bend. Soon after, Robert Baratheon went hunting, drunk, reckless, unarmored, accompanied by his Lannister squire. Varys received word quickly. The boar's tusks had struck deep, and the king's strength ebbed like a receding tide. The realm held its breath. Robert returned to the Red Keep, carried on a litter, pale and failing. His final hours dripped away like candle wax. Ned remained by his side, writing the king's last will. But even Robert's written words, "my rightful heir," could not protect the realm from the storm that now loomed. And Varys prepared. He spoke softly to his little birds. He soothed frightened servants. He watched the Lannisters gather like wolves around a wounded stag. And when Robert finally died, the Iron Throne sat vulnerable, empty, waiting for the next hand bold enough to claim it. Cersei moved first. She tore the will. She dismissed Ned. She declared Joffrey king. And in that moment, Varys saw the war begin, not in swords drawn, but in eyes shifting, alliances breaking, loyalty snapping like old threads in a tapestry worn by time. Ned made his final stand, reaching for honor, reaching for justice, reaching for truth. But truth in King's Landing was as deadly as wildfire. Varys watched the Lannisters strike, watched Ned imprisoned, watched chaos blossom through the city like night-blooming flowers. And though the spider's face remained calm, his mind raced. He had warned Ned. He had hoped the Northern Lord would bend just enough to survive. But wolves do not bend. They break. And so the fall of Ned Stark became the first great fracture in the realm. A fracture that would unleash a war of kings, queens, and shadows. Varys stepped back into the quiet, into the dim corridors where his web stretched endlessly, and whispered to the stillness. Another king dead. Another truth buried. Another storm rising. He did not fear the storm. He only feared who would survive it. War does not always begin with trumpets or armies marching across fields. Sometimes it begins quietly, between the iron bars of a dungeon cell, in the trembling breath of a man who finally realizes he has lost everything. That was how the War of Five Kings first took shape, in the dark beneath the Red Keep, where Eddard Stark awaited execution. Varys visited him often. He moved through the dungeons silently, torchlight flickering across damp stone walls. The jailers stepped aside without a word. Even in chains, Ned Stark sat tall, though grief etched deep lines across his face. His daughters were missing, his men scattered, his house in jeopardy, his honor fractured. And yet, Varys admired him. "You are a good man, Lord Stark," Varys said one night, his voice soft as a lullaby drifting between shadows. "But the realm does not reward good men." Ned stared at him with weary eyes. "Why do you care?" "Because," Varys whispered, "I care about the realm. And a realm at peace needs men like you alive." He offered Ned a path of survival, confession, mercy, exile. Better a living wolf in the north than a dead one in King's Landing. Ned hesitated, torn between truth and the safety of his children. But the choice did not matter. Joffrey Baratheon had already made his own. When Ned Stark's head fell upon the steps of the Great Sept, Varys closed his eyes. Not in grief, for grief was a luxury the spider could not afford, but in acknowledgement. A single life had cracked the realm in two, and the fracture would soon become a chasm. The War of Five Kings had begun. The claimants. The realm splintered like glass, dropped from a great height. Robb Stark, crowned king in the north by grieving bannermen. Stannis Baratheon, cold and uncompromising, convinced that law alone gave him right to rule. Renly Baratheon, charismatic and beloved, choosing charm over bloodline. Joffrey, seated upon the throne through lies and Queen Cersei's ruthless cunning. Balon Greyjoy, whispering rebellion from the Iron Islands. 5 kings, each dreaming of power. 5 kings, each blind to the damage they caused. And in the heart of King's Landing, Varys watched it all unfold. He listened to Cersei's orders. He listened to Tyrion's strategies. He listened to Littlefinger's schemes. But most importantly, he listened to the realm itself. The small folk were terrified. Fields lay empty of men who marched to war. Rivers filled with bodies. Merchants whispered of famine. Children huddled in alleys, hungry and forgotten. Varys heard their suffering louder than any lord's ambition. Varys and Tyrion, an unlikely alliance. When Tyrion Lannister became Hand of the King, Varys found in him something rare in the capital. Intelligence untainted by vanity, cunning sharpened by necessity, and compassion buried beneath sarcasm. The two men formed a partnership based on mutual respect and mutual fear of what the Lannister regime might become. One night, as they studied maps scattered across the council table, Tyrion spoke first. "You know everything that happens in this city," he said. "But the one thing I want to know is the thing you never say." Varys raised a brow. "And what is that?" "Who?" Tyrion asked softly. "Do you really serve?" The spider smiled, a slow, enigmatic curve of the lips. "The realm," he whispered. "Someone must." Tyrion believed him. Perhaps because Tyrion himself understood what it meant to be underestimated, mocked, and dismissed by the world. Or perhaps because Tyrion needed someone whose loyalty wasn't bought by gold or fear. Together, they outmaneuvered plots, blocked assassins, exposed traitors. But the war pressed closer each day. Ravaged countryside, burning villages, banners rising and falling like breaths of a dying giant. And then the true threat emerged, not a king, but a firestorm. The threat of Stannis and the Blackwater. Stannis Baratheon marched with righteous fury and Melisandre's fiery visions. His fleet carried not only soldiers, but fanaticism. King's Landing trembled. Citizens whispered and prayed. Cersei drank and prepared for the worst. Joffrey strutted like a rooster, ignorant of how close death stood. Varys paced the halls, listening to every anxious rumor. And he knew something essential. If Stannis won, the city would burn. If Joffrey won, the war would continue. And the people would suffer either way. The spider moved quietly, guiding Tyrion where he could, positioning allies where needed, nudging the tide ever so slightly without revealing his deeper plan. But the threat was real. Stannis' army was stronger, his will unbreakable, his fire divine. And so, in one of his rare moments of openness, Varys confessed a secret to Tyrion. Daemon Targaryen's Blackfire rebellion nearly destroyed the realm long ago. What we face now is worse. Stannis believes he fights for a god. Tyrion studied him. "And who do you think will win this war?" "The one who survives," Varys murmured. "Victory and survival are not always the same. The Blackwater burns, The night of the Battle of Blackwater smelled of salt, smoke, and terror. Varys walked the tunnels beneath the city, guiding Tyrion's forces through the hidden passages only he knew. Above, Stannis' fleet advanced, a great black wave ready to crash upon the shores. Then came wildfire. The bay erupted into emerald flame. Ships shattered. Men screamed. The sky glowed sickly green. Tyrion's strategy saved the city, though not without terrible cost. Varys stood in the shadows, watching the inferno reflecting in the water like a mirror of hell. Victory came, but it was bitter. Stannis retreated. The Lannisters cheered. The small folk cried in relief. But Varys? He felt only the tightening of the noose around the realm's neck, because while all eyes watched the kings, Varys watched the bigger danger looming across the narrow sea. The dragons stirring in exile, the young queen learning to lead, the true storm preparing to return. King's Landing had survived the Blackwater, but the realm had not survived the war. And Varys knew. The true game had only just begun. When the smoke of Blackwater Bay faded, and the Lannisters tightened their golden grip on the Iron Throne, Varys walked the corridors of the Red Keep more carefully than ever. Victory had not brought peace. It had only quieted the noise of war long enough for new ambitions to fester in the dark. Tyrion Lannister, the one man Varys had trusted to balance power with wisdom, had been pushed aside, his heroism ignored, his warnings dismissed. Cersei resumed her ruthless command of the court. Joffrey remained unpredictable, cruel, and terrifyingly pleased with the carnage he had caused. The realm was not saved. It was trembling on its foundations. And Varys knew that the time for subtle guidance was ending. A greater force was rising across the sea, a force he had nurtured for years, a force that might, just might, be worthy of the realm he served. Daenerys Targaryen. The Dragon Queen's rise. The whispers reached him slowly at first. Stories carried by sailors, merchants, spies, a silver-haired girl in the east, a Khaleesi who walked unburnt from fire, a widow who forged an army from freed slaves, a conqueror with dragons soaring above her. Dragons. The word itself spread like a forgotten memory brought back to life. Varys felt a quiet thrill the first time a little bird whispered it in his ear. Not because he loved dragons, he did not, but because dragons were change incarnate, power incarnate, the one force strong enough to shatter corrupt kingdoms and reshape them anew. He believed Daenerys might be different, not because of blood, but because she had suffered, not because of prophecy, but because she had learned compassion and strength through hardship. And so Varys, ever the patient architect, strengthened his secret alliance with Illyrio Mopatis. Gold, ships, letters, informants, all quietly guided toward the Dragon Queen. Though he served in King's Landing, his true eyes searched the horizon for the rising storm. But storms do not come without sacrifice. Lord Varys and the Fall of Tyrion. When Joffrey Baratheon died at his own wedding feast, the realm gasped. Chaos erupted, suspicion turned violent, and Tyrion was accused of the crime. Varys knew the truth. He knew Tyrion was innocent. But innocence was meaningless in a city built on ambition and fear. Varys visited Tyrion in his cell, their final conversation soft and solemn. "You once asked me who I serve," Varys said. "I remember," Tyrion replied bleakly. "You serve the realm." "Yes," Varys whispered. and the realm needs you alive." When the time came, Varys unlocked Tyrion's cell, guiding him through torchlit tunnels beneath the keep. The same tunnels he once walked during the wildfire assault. The same passages he had memorized as a younger man under Aerys. Shadows wrapped around them like cloaks. "Where will I go?" Tyrion asked. "Somewhere far from here," Varys murmured. "Somewhere your mind might still be of use." But fate had one last cruelty to show them both. Tyrion did not flee quietly. He confronted his father, Tywin Lannister. And by dawn, King's Landing awoke to the news that Tywin, Hand of the King, the realm's stern architect, was dead. Varys did not judge Tyrion for the act. Tywin had shaped a kingdom in fear and fire. Perhaps this was the ending he deserved. But the murder sealed Varys's fate. He could not remain in the capital. He could not play the game from the shadows any longer. Cersei would seek blood, and Varys refused to waste what remained of his purpose. And so, slipping through moonlit alleys, he boarded a ship bound east, toward Daenerys, toward the dragons, toward the final chapter of his life. The Spider and the Dragon. When Varys reached Meereen, he found a queen in turmoil. Daenerys ruling a city she did not trust, surrounded by enemies, plagued by rebellion and betrayal. Yet beneath her sorrow, her uncertainty, her fire, Varys recognized something rare, a desire to create a better world. He pledged himself to her cause, revealing secrets he had hidden for decades. He admitted he had opposed her father. He admitted he had supported Robert. He admitted he had done whatever was necessary to protect the people of the realm. Daenerys listened, and for a time she believed him. Varys believed in her as he had believed in no other. Not in Aerys, not in Robert, not in Stannis, or Renly, or Balon, or Robb. Daenerys held within her the potential to break the wheel of endless war. But the wheel is heavier than one woman can lift alone. And as Daenerys sailed for Westeros, dragons circling overhead, armies marching in rhythm with destiny, Varys felt hope for the first time in years. He imagined a realm guided by justice instead of cruelty, wisdom instead of ego. He imagined children growing without fear of king's whims. He imagined a peace that did not rest upon lies. But hope, like fire, is dangerous. Betrayal, flame, and the end of the spider. When Daenerys reached Dragonstone, Varys served loyally. When she battled Cersei, he advised carefully. When she chose mercy, he smiled. When she chose fear, he worried. But as the war dragged on, something in the Dragon Queen began to crack. Loss hardened her. Grief hollowed her. Isolation sharpened her fire. Varys sensed it first. He saw shadows in her eyes. He heard tremors in her voice. He felt danger in her growing certainty. So he turned to Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, by blood and name. A man with a good heart, a gentle will, and a claim stronger than Daenerys. Varys sought not power for Jon, but balance for the realm. He believed Daenerys would choose fire. He believed Jon would choose peace. And so the spider made his final gamble. He sent letters. He spoke carefully to allies. He whispered truths that might save the realm. But Daenerys learned of his betrayal. On Dragonstone's dark sand beach, beneath a sky heavy with moonlight, Varys faced his fate. He stood tall, hands steady, expression calm. The queen he had once believed in refused to meet his eyes. Her dragon loomed behind her, a living shadow carved from flame. "Do you have any last words?" she asked. Varys took a slow breath, the sea wind carrying the scent of salt and fate. "I hope I was wrong," he whispered. Then fire took him. Swift, blinding, final. And yet, in his last moment, Varys felt neither fear nor regret. He had lived in shadows, shaped kings, saved lives unseen, and fought for a dream few ever understood. Not for crowns, not for vengeance, not for bloodlines. For the realm, always the realm, the spider burned. But the whispers he left behind shaped the world long after his ashes cooled.